Beautiful, brother. I really love seeing more and more people really stepping into their power and really following their passion. I'll tell you, I was at this gathering last Friday, and it was a gathering of young people like myself, and we all came together and we all shared what our gifts are. Some of us are healers, others are astrologers. Somebody else is an artist and does amazing paintings. And so I'm just really happy to see how more and more people are stepping out of the old paradigm of following someone else's ideas and really stepping out of the box and taking back their own power and following what excites them. And I'll tell you, when you do that, magic starts to happen and the universe conspires to assist you in the most magical ways. So it's absolutely amazing.
It is amazing, and this is the time. I mean, the energies are really lining up for people to, further expand into their awareness and expand their consciousness, and really lining the energies up to step into what their role is. And to me, there is nothing at all more exciting than that. And really, this is kind of a perfect segue to our guest tonight. Before I ever met John Riley, his reputation was made known to me. And he is quite a fascinating gentleman. With a background in top-secret military projects to 23 years in motion picture special effects, he's taking his knowledge and experience to a much greater level and sharing his discoveries with the world. He has created zero-point research and the Lifestream Generator. Now, what's funny to me is, John titles himself researcher, and to me, he's just so much more. But how could you put all of that on a business card or anything like that? But he does. He's doing some amazing research, and he's sharing it with all of us, and we get the benefit of his expertise and his knowledge here tonight. And I welcome John D. Riley to our program. John, are you with us?
Yes, I am. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Now, you really are. I mean, you're all over the place. At least, You've shown up more for me in the last, I guess, 6 months or so. Than before that, and I'm not exactly sure why, but it certainly earned you a spot on Dream Reality New Earth Radio. Now, you've got a tremendous background and some great experiences, and it's really prepared you for what you're involved in now and what you're doing. Do you want to give us just a little bit about the background and kind of bring us a little bit into what it was like evolving in your world?
Oh, sure. Yes, actually. Well, I've been engineering for nearly 3 decades now, and in the motion picture industry, I was known as an electronic design engineer. So people would bring pretty much anything, that was incredibly designed on a 2-dimensional piece of paper, and our company, we always had the ability to bring it to about 99% of its accuracy of how the designers illustrated it. So that really built an amazing reputation for us, and we just had that dimensional way of seeing technology and how to fabricate. So that served real well, and before that, I spent a few years in the skunk works over at Lockheed Aircraft when it was in Burbank, California. And after 6 months of, how I got into Lockheed was kind of fun, actually, because they once in a while they have these orientations, and they invite anyone that passes the interview to go into the orientation, and it's no pay, and you have to go from 7 o'clock to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's no guarantee of a job, and it's 40 hours. So you have to go through this orientation if you really want to work there. And what's very interesting is that when I got to the 4th day after each test, they told me I could leave. And I thought I was actually being escorted out, but then they came and got me in the hall. I said, no, you're going to go into processing, but when you go, you got to go to the left, not the right. And so when I got down that corridor, on the left side, there was a skunk, and they bring you into processing, and they brief you for a confidentiality clearance. And then 6 months later, on the average, you get your top secret clearance, and then you move into another division that you're not allowed to talk about. So any time of your life. So they literally say what you've been doing for the last 6 months, that is your story. That's what you tell everybody. So that was a very interesting eye-opener at such a young age to you get my top secret clearance and then enter a cipher code on a door every day and walk in and never be able to speak about it.
Now, were you an inquisitive child? I mean, were you always looking to find out how things worked and stuff like that? Because it seems that would have been the foundation of all this for you.
Oh, absolutely. Being so inquisitive, when I was about 8 years old, my dad used to get me remote control cars, and I would take them apart on the first day, and it got him very angry sometimes. And then one day he said, you got 10 minutes to put that back together. And literally, when he came back like 15 minutes later, it was all back together and working perfectly. So he constantly started getting me robotic, and different type of, everything from erector sets and on, to and I was constantly, building and making model rockets, flying them up as high as possible, all sorts of, levels of just constant exploration. And he supported me, which was great. So, yes, and that never left. When I got into Lockheed, I was as inquisitive as I was as a kid, and sometimes it almost got me in trouble because I would walk in other departments that I shouldn't be in, but actually it actually paid off because my supervisors noticed that I was more than just curious. I was very inquisitive, and I was absorbing the information. So when I was doing my own tests, that I wasn't actually certified to do, they said, there's only like a handful of people in Lockheed that can do what you're doing. Where did you learn this? I said, I just observed others, and then I asked if I could do my own tests on these pieces of technology, and they said, yeah, sure. They were actually kind of happy that I stepped up, and so I was able to get myself certified and move into a very higher rank at such a younger age because I was able to do it internally and not go outside of the, and create my education. I was able to create my education within the confines of Lockheed Aircraft.
I love it. Now, one of those experiences at Lockheed, something that happened to you that wasn't in the manual, later has had a great impact on what you're doing now. You want to share that story? Now, we haven't talked about this. There may be more stories than the one I know, so let's just see what you come up with now.
Yeah, you must be talking about the one where I got electrocuted.
Yes, the electrocution story.
Yes, the electrocution, how we explain it to everyone else is that at the division that I worked at, we had a very, very special machine, and it was actually an energy generator. But what was special about it is that we had the ability to adjust the voltage, but what was very unique about it is that we were able to adjust the frequency. And a lot of people don't realize that the universal grid that powers the world works at 110 to 220, 240 volts. That's what normally comes in most people's homes, and it's at either 50 or 60 hertz. And that 50 or 60 hertz is the frequency of the alternating current that is being generated from the power plants. Military applications and military aircraft use 400 hertz or 400 cycles. It's a very high frequency that runs through the energy or the electricity. So this generator had the ability to go from 50 hertz all the way up to 800 hertz. And I was in an experimental when I was actually working on some certain units that were actually running 400 cycle high voltage energy. And I reached in with a screwdriver, and I didn't have myself properly grounded, and I shorted out against a high voltage power tube, and it went through my body. And at that moment, instead of throwing me off of the unit like 50 or 60 hertz dirty energy would have, I became completely alert. And it literally, embedded that moment in my memory. I could see the clock, as clear as day. I could see, that room as clear as day, and everything that was happening in that present moment. And I also checked my body, and I said, wow, I am like completely energized from that. I'm not disrupted in any way, shape, or form. So with that one, mistake, if you would like to call it, actually really started me to ask a lot of questions. And then I started to, on my own spare time, I started to experiment with different devices that was designed to run on 110 volts at 60 hertz. And I would experiment to see if I can increase the energy and then also test. I was increasing the frequency and then testing its consumption if it was using the same amount of current or the same amount of power in general. And I found out every time that I was able to increase the frequency, the devices would run so much more efficient, sometimes 30 to 80% more efficient. So I started asking more questions. I said, how come we're not doing this in our infrastructures around the world? And everyone said, well, we'd have to change the infrastructures because everything's built to work on 50 or 60 hertz. How do we change it to 400 or 800 cycles? Who's going to do that? And so, I stopped asking that question.
And so now I want us to, I'm going to veer away a little bit from this because I just before we move too far ahead, I want to find out how you went from Skunk Works to 23 years in motion picture special effects. I mean, was that the jump, a few years at Skunk Works doing top secret stuff, and then all of a sudden you're in the motion picture industry?
Well, exactly how that came to be is that I was maybe it was after that moment where I had that 400 cycles run through my body, I became very aware of my environment. And I saw people that were there 15, 20, 25 years doing the same repetitive thing over and over. And I was, at the time, I think I was about 21 years old, and I was at a labor grade 18. And when I started there, I was at a labor grade 8. So as high as you can go is 18. So within a year and a half, almost 2 years at Lockheed, I reached the highest labor grade that you possibly could get, and that was a blue collar. That was in a blue collar. And then it was offered to me to become a red badge, which is a salary position, and they offered me to run my own department. And they said, I already set a record there. Why don't you keep going and be the youngest supervisor? And I said, that's great, but I'm a hands-on guy. I got to build my own lab here, because we opened up a new division, and you guys let me spec out the lab, and I'm a hands-on guy. I don't really want to push papers, but thank you so much for the offer. And that didn't go over too well, because they really want to be in that position. And I kept saying, I want to stay here. I want to be a hands-on guy. And and so from that moment, I started looking around. I realized I really didn't have much more I could do there. And so I started looking at my future. I said, well, do I want to make a choice and be a lifer at Lockheed, or do I want to explore further? And so I got to the point where I was literally stagnant in what I was doing there. Yeah, it was exciting. I was working on the latest technologies with the stealth fighters, SR-71 U-2s, while they were still flying, and then working on the stealth, which was the latest of the technologies. But then it wasn't enough for me. And so I was given an opportunity to kind of segue out of Lockheed. So after 3.5 years, I did so. And I was always building things on my spare time that were electronic and mostly, optoelectronics, which is lights, which is LEDs. And I would make these sequential props and things from like old shows and movies, and I would replicate them. And then I would walk around and go to the studios and just like show people what I did. Finally, I was given a job offer. And, and I said yes to it, and so that's how I kind of got my foot in the door. And it's really funny. The first movie that I ever worked on was a movie called Cocoon.
I love that film.
Yeah, now if you remember the story premise of what the movie was about, it was about rejuvenation, like within the human system, and that the pool and the energies. So it's kind of really interesting how that really embedded itself in my subconscious, and what I'm doing now, where it's very similar to that understanding of what the movie premise was about to what we're actually doing today.
Now, John, talk to us about what was going on with you in your personal evolution and your own consciousness and awareness during this time at Skunkworks and then in the 23 years in the motion picture industry, because, I mean, you obviously, you know, just based on what I know of you and my contact with you now, had some sort of, you know, really stellar path into your own conscious awareness.
Well, yes, Dr. Dream. Thank you for bringing that up. It actually does take me back a little bit. And one of the opportunities that I had is when I was at Lockheed, you know, and I reached that apex within the labor grade. I was making more money than I knew what to do with. I was putting most of it into savings, but then I started to explore the human self. At 21, I was doing isolation tank studies in the early 80s. You know, and I was going to seminars, you know, with John C. Lilly, who was doing, you know, the research on, you know, on the dolphins and the higher brain states. And so I was trying to, you know, understand his research, and also working and, you know, just looking at the higher metaphysical aspects and just letting it absorb. I wasn't locked into anything except, you know, the isolation tanks, and then just constantly pushing that realm. So I was noticing that my consciousness was really in a wider spectrum than the others that I was working around, and I started to explore this. And then I stumbled upon astral projection, and someone introduced me to it, and I said, well, I already do that, but I didn't have the method where I could do it so perfectly. And so then I started studying astral projection with the combination of the isolation tanks. And and then after meeting John C. Lilly in these seminars, I was at this wall, and then I was kind of you know, given certain guidance how to have a breakthrough, you know, and they were kind of looking at me because they were looking at me with this side eye, and I couldn't understand what that is. But now I can look back and I realize, because I've seen that in so many that I work with, and you can see they're right on that precipice of what we call the Great Shift. And so, to make a long story short, I had a sequence of events that happened in my life that literally fragmented me into a higher state of reality. Now, being so young and having no one else around me, I wasn't able to really deal with it. I mean, I saw transparencies in people. You know, my girlfriend, you know, I was able to just read her, literally her matrix, and it literally started to freak her out. She said, where did you get that information? I never told you that before. You know, and I said, it's right there on you. And of course, I didn't have the verbiage, and you'll look at people, you know, they can feel the energies. There's something different. And so I realized I was actually, almost everyone around me was becoming a little fearful because I didn't know exactly what was going on. I was just being, you know, who I was, and it was like literally freaking everybody out. You know, so, and then I noticed, and then another event happened that literally fragmented me in such a way where my reality was drastically shifted. And it's something that I have never heard ever happen to anyone else before. And I don't really want to go into the deepness of the experience of what happened, but it was literally a crossover event where someone close to me passed away in the middle of an astral projection event that I was going through, and those streams crossed over. And what it did, it left me with one foot in the door of the other reality. And so with that, I could not handle. I literally withdrew from everything. I couldn't even go out the door. I couldn't understand what was happening. And I was so fragmented at that point. I considered many options in my life at that point in time, and they were not really healthy options. And right. I remember at that point in time, there was a higher level of guidance that came in and gave me an option. There were two options. I could continue this course, but my family and friends that I have now will not understand me. You need to seek others that are experiencing what you are, or you can go back to sleep, you know, for 22 years. I know it sounds funny, but that was the options that were given to me, and I opted on the latter. I said I would wish to go back to sleep. So I did get an option to take the blue pill, you know, and apparently you could do that. You could do that once in your life, you know, when you fragment or you have this step in that didn't look like it was really pre-planned, I was given an option to subdue myself to a certain level. And what was very interesting is that event did not come to my consciousness until my agreement came forth when I was 44 years old, because it happened at 22. And then my life here took a drastic shift at 44. And then the memories came in of that agreement. So it was very interesting. But I always had that insightfulness through my life, but it was only like maybe 30% of what I truly explored or discovered when I was at the age of 22.
Okay, now just to get a grip on where you're at now, I wouldn't normally ask this, but how old are you now?
I am 50.
Okay. So you've had probably a relatively, or maybe not so relatively, intense 6 years?
Well, what's very interesting is in 2005, that is when the Lifestream technology came forth. I went through many shifts in my life, and I guess it's actually most people would call it receiving the great gift. And to receive a higher level of consciousness, sometimes you have to be removed from the illusions. And when we understand an awakening, sometimes it can come many ways. It can come fascinating. It can come very rudely, but an awakening nonetheless. So when your materialistic life starts to be released before you, and there's nothing you can do, to hold on to it, and until the sequence of events reveal themselves, you're kind of going with it and trying to understand the reasons why. So I had a multi-million-dollar business, I had about 18 employees in the motion picture industry, and just made the conscious choice to leave the industry. And then, when I did that, everything else around me, the house in the Hollywood Hills, it was all, I just, moved away from having anything in the materialistic aspect. And I went through this transition in my life, from having pretty much anything I want, a beautiful family and the kids with the house on the hill, to the removal of almost all of that. And so this is a very interesting sequence in my life, to understand what was happening. And I had to go into this deep, it was almost like a deep cocoon. And I went very deep, and then I started remembering, because all of a sudden I wasn't working with my hands, and I always had the ability, to bring forth a new concept and always receive money from it. I was always good at creating business, and so I segued when I closed the special effects business. I had my production company, which I did a couple feature films, but then I opened it up and I did DVDs and also post-production. And I came up with a different concept to do DVDs, and I was doing what's called library management. And I stumbled upon this esoteric company that had these suppressed or alternative ways of thinking DVDs and different subjects. Or actually, they didn't have DVDs; they wanted to convert it. So I met them, and I offered them to convert their library. Well, they had, David Icke. I was converting David Icke's, and I was converting William Henry's, and all the UFO, secret agendas, and the crop circle. This entire vast library, and I was absorbing all this information, subconsciously, getting paid to do it, and actually watching, like 18 hours of David Icke, and I'm realizing. The stuff that he's talking about, like one of his first ones was like Freedom Road and Prison to Paradise, and he was using analogies. And then when I did William Henry's work, all of a sudden these sacred symbols that he was bringing up, started to spark all this knowledge, and I was trying to figure out what was going on. And then I just had this thirst, to go further in my life, and that's when I stumbled upon. I was looking, to connect these dots of this ancient understanding, these mysteries of the pyramids and these sacred sites. And I knew it was about energy, because then it stumbled upon what I knew, working at Lockheed, and then, to connect those dots in my own life, and then to bring tangible, to bring proof instead of just, sitting there and theoretically presenting, on a projection screen my theories. I said, no, I'm going to bring something forth that's going to prove this, that these energy fields exist. You know, we're at this point consciously, but we're also at this point in the alignment so that, you know, within the universe to start to tune into these frequencies once again. This is where it gets really interesting. We can elaborate on that a little bit later, you know, in the show if we have time. But this is what you know, we talk about connecting the dots, and then understanding what was happening in most of these sacred chambers in Egypt. And it's all about, you know, rejuvenating the physical self, you know, to be in the highest vibration, and then stumbling upon this very unusual structure in, you know, the desert here in California called the Integratron. And I know probably a lot of the listeners probably know about this. That was a structure, it was a 50-foot dome out in the middle of Landers, California, near Palm Springs. And George Van Tassel was the inventor of this place, used sacred geometry and used the ley lines of the earth and built this on that particular point on the planet. And what he was going to do when he turned it on, it was literally going to be a massive cellular rejuvenator. And it was literally going to be an etheric bombarder, and you would literally take your pilgrimage, you know, and he was going to have 3,000 to 5,000 people a day go into this structure. And once it turned on, it was creating an etherical energy. It had no electrics going to it. It had no metal in the structure. It was all made with all wood and like using like an old shipbuilding, you know, 100-year-old methods of how they built ships with, you know, with wood structures. So this is really amazing, and you would literally just walk in the entrance and walk through it for 45 seconds and walk through the exit. And you would have did a 270-degree arc walk through, and that would rejuvenate the human body. And you would just go back whenever you felt the need to recharge. And this was the gift he was going to give to mankind. Unfortunately, he passed away before he was able to turn it on. And, you know, we are very fortunate that the structure still exists to this day, and hundreds of people, thousands of people, you know, take their pilgrimage out there to visit this auspicious site and to bathe in the energy. The owners there, they still do toning baths up in the upper structure, which is it's really easy to understand once you get up to the upper structure, because as soon as you speak, your voice comes back to you. It's literally considered a perfectly acoustic structure. So as soon as you speak, you hear yourself right away. It's instantaneous. So when someone tones or uses gongs or instruments, it literally floods through your entire body. Wow. So that literally proved, and a lot of the temples in Egypt and around the world do the same thing, you know, energetically. So this is where another dot connecting was very important. You know, and so I all of a sudden I received vast information. It was like the final piece of the puzzle when I got to the Integratron, and I talked to the owners, and I said, I will have a prototype of the function of this structure within 6 months. And they said, yeah, we've heard that from a lot of people over the last 15 years. And I said, no. I said, I will be back within 6 months. And literally about 5.5 months later, that's when I brought forth the prototype of the Lifestream, that we call it now, the Lifestream Generator. And when I brought it there, it quantified the energy in such an immense way, because we're able to measure it, you know, with our instruments. When I'm here, it'll emit one level of energy, and it's measurable. And then we bring it to the Integratron, and it literally amplifies it times 10, you know, to 20 times, just because of putting it in the sacred structure that is amplified and tuned to the earth. So it was really amazing to see those readings go literally off the scale. And so this intrigued me, and then I started bringing the technologies to Egypt and different sites around the world, and actually testing them in the same way. And it's amazing. So we can literally, you can see without a doubt the focus of energy that the ancients understood, and how they were able to amplify the natural energies of the earth and focus them into what we call the holy of the chambers.
Now, give us a little bit more, John. You've been taking trips. You've been taking people to Egypt with you. Tell us what happens. And I saw a picture last week or the week before that was mind-blowing. But give us a taste of that experience, and maybe when the next one is.
Oh, sure. Yes. Well, yes, I do. I've taken 3 trips and hosted people in Egypt with my friends Greg Roach and Hallie Evelyn from Spirit Quest Tours, and we do usually primary sequences, numerical sequences. Our last event was the 1111 journey, and that was really a beautiful, amazing trip. It was 13 days, and it was very interesting because as soon when I was in Egypt in 2010, coming out of the Great Pyramid, I had a vision, and I saw myself on top of Mount Sinai, on top of Mount Moses, in the Sinai on 11/11/11. And when I came down, I said, we will have our trip on 11/11/11 next year, and we will be on the Sinai, on Mount Moses. And so many people kept saying, well, how come we're not going to be in the Great Pyramid on 11/11? I kept saying, we are to be on the Sinai. And that's all. I stuck to it no matter what, and I wouldn't allow that to change. I said, that is the root of this trip. And so what was really interesting is that when we did go, when we were there during November 8th to November 22nd, we were there during the election times, and that's when Tahrir Square was, if you were watching the news, you saw everything that was escalating there. So we were there in the heart of it, during this time. And there was also a lot of very interesting energies that were coming through, that people were fearing on 11/11. So while we were at the Sinai on 11/11, they closed the pyramid on 11/11. So all the groups that had plans to be in the pyramid on 11/11/11 were not allowed. The government closed the pyramids to everyone. So there were a lot of upset groups that traveled all over the world. And so when we saw that online, everyone just kind of looked and said, and here we are on the Sinai, and there's no one else here but us. So it was very unique, and so confirming that that's where we were to be. So I always trust my guidance, and that's one thing I don't allow myself to be second guessed in regards to something when you get a direct stream from the pyramid, you should heed it. You should definitely listen. So I've learned to do that. I was hard-headed a couple times, but now I'm getting it.
That's amazing. Now, when's the next trip to Egypt?
The next trip is actually going to be for the 12/12/12 to the 12/21. To the end of the world. We're calling it the end of the world tour as we know it.
And so, when are you coming back? On the 21st? No, you're coming back.
No, actually, I think we leave on the 8th of December, and we come back on the 23rd. Yeah, I think those are actually, we arrive on the 10th. We're still streamlining it now. We're putting it all together as we speak. And, so that is, so it's going to be about 13 days, and about 6 of those days or 5 days, we cruise the Nile, which is really amazing on the best ships, the best ships that are there. It's a 5-star trip. We make sure that, the ones who are called to these journeys, they get the best of everything. When we were there for 11/11/11, we did mostly pre-dawn excursions. We were at the temples by ourselves at sunrise. So if you can just imagine being there in the silence with the sun coming up over the horizon, it's just one of the. You do one morning this way. You want to do every temple this way. It is absolutely an amazing experience, and we have it all to ourselves. Our groups are anywhere from 20 to 30, 30 people, and having an entire temple to yourself at that time, it's absolutely amazing. It's a life-changing experience.
Now, John, where do people get information about this? I want to give people, because I'm so interested, I got my pen out to write down whatever you tell me right now.
Oh, yes. Well, you can actually go to spiritquesttours.com, and that's exactly, if you heard that clear enough, it's just spiritquesttours.com. And you can sign up for the information, and we haven't posted the actual space or we're not actually announcing the trip. It's really amazing. We've had so many people like yourself just hear about the trips prior, and they said, I want to go, sign me up. So the word of mouth is like literally, I think, almost have this trip half full already. So it's really beautiful. It's really beautiful how we don't really have to do anything. People just feel the call, to arrive, and and then they just go with what resonates. So we don't look for we don't. The way that we do this, all the money is inverted right back into the trip. That's the reason why we can, be at the best hotels, and being at the Mina House, which was actually the first. It was originally a palace, and it was there, back in the late 1800s, before anything, right near the Giza Plateau. If you look at some of the original pictures, it's just amazing. And this place keeps its history. It's absolutely an incredible place to stay. Then we don't stay on the old boats when we're cruising the Nile. We usually stay on the latest boats, which are beautiful. And sometimes it's even hard for you to realize that you're on, you are cruising the Nile until you go to the top deck or look out the windows. So it's really beautiful, really an amazing trip.
Wow, it sounds fabulous. All right, now what I want to do is I want to jump into Zero Point Research and the Lifestream Generator. I want you to, I've been watching videos and reading and all this stuff, and I got to tell you, sometimes, I got to put my hat on a little tighter just to keep my head together. So I want you to kind of take us through what this is about and what the biggest ramifications are about this research that you're doing in this technology.
Well, the biggest ramifications. Well, the first thing that usually happens is that this is something that is very interesting. Is when you're journeying, to have the truth revealed to you, and this is something that was very interesting in my life, growing up. And I had a lot of questions that most people weren't able to answer, and they weren't able to answer because it wasn't in their belief structure. It wasn't in their dogmas or their religions that they were brought into their lives. And I realized that I was surrounded by almost the same archetype, and I realized that I had to start asking questions outside my comfort zone. So this is something that I always did through my 20s, especially at Lockheed Aircraft. I had 7 engineers. I was constantly picking their brains. And what was great is that I would definitely honor them first, and then they would divulge this information to me clearly. And it was really funny because the first thing they do is they look at your badge to see what your clearance rating is. And if you had a high enough clearance, then they'd share information with you. If you didn't, they'd shut up. So it's kind of funny. We always had to do the badge scan, but then the exploration in regards to the Lifestream understanding is that when we realize that we're connecting to these hidden fields, these fields that have been forgotten on this planet for thousands of years, and we can see it tangibly. When we look at the pyramids, we're still in awe and in mystery when we try to understand how those were constructed. When we look at the temples and some of these incredible sites around the world, we're still in awe when we see these, 50, 100-ton stones that are perfectly placed and precisionally cut with the absolute tolerances, that our latest technology today can do. So when we start to understand what was happening thousands of years ago on the planet that is not happening today, so I started realizing that it was these energy fields, and it was kind of forgotten because we've accepted certain infrastructures of energy on the planet because when they were brought forth. But we also at the same time were given opportunities for other energy fields, but we weren't consciously ready for these fields at this point in time. So this is, the introduction on the Lifestream does exactly that. It opens us up to these unified fields, these etherical binding fields of energy that are in unification with all life on the planet. And most people can attest when they sit in this energy, they become very present. And that is the first most important part, is to be in the now. We don't even have to explain it, because if someone comes in that's very stressed, when you become very present, your stress diminishes greatly from the mind and the body. And we watched that tangibly. We literally had, honestly, today, around 1 o'clock today, we had an elderly woman where her children brought her in because she was dealing with a really difficult physical issue in her body, and she had no energy. They had to literally carry her and put her in a wheelchair and brought her here. And when after the experience, she literally was able to stand up on her own. They were just blown away because all of a sudden she was aware, she wasn't lethargic, and she wanted to get up. Then she started talking, and they were kind of just looking, and they go, "What's going on here?" And I go, "Well, this is exactly what happens when people are introduced to these levels of energy. The body takes this energy and absorbs it. And what it does in that moment, it raises the cell voltage, and it brings us into cellular resonance. So it brings us back into harmony. It's not always instantaneous. It all depends on what you're physically dealing with. But one of the key things is that the lady that came in, the first thing they said is, so she's very spiritual. And I was just smiling because I was having a conversation with her, energetically, right when she was coming in the door. And I realized that this is something that she wanted her family amongst herself to experience. So when she got up and walked around after that, they realized that something profound was happening. I said, yeah, she was just waiting for the right, connection to show her that she could shift, but she also wants the family in a whole, to understand a much bigger picture. So I'm sure you can use your imagination, what happens when people want something so badly, with others, but everyone experienced it at the same time, so they all left in such a much more unified structure within the family, and it was really beautiful to watch that. And that's what I really, am grateful to witness, with the hundreds of people, with the thousands that have experienced the energy, but the hundreds that I have actually touched and done this energy transfer with as well. Because there's two parts to the experience. You can just bathe in the energy, and then also we can interact with it. And that usually blows people's minds that we can do this. We're not connected to anything. We're just in this field. But when we touch each other, we're sending energy through each other. And it's very tangible, without a doubt.
Now, what are the lasting results from it? Or is it, do we need to buy one of these Lifestream generators to have in the house once we have a few sessions with you? We don't want to miss out.
Well, I actually in the first couple of years I struggled with the understanding of this energy, and I literally looked up and said, "Why do I have this? What am I supposed to do with this?" And there's two things. If you take the role. And I really, try to avoid ego terms and ego energies in my life as highly as possible. And, being in the motion picture industry, it was all about the ego. So, and I really worked hard to stay away from that. So this is very interesting. It's like, now if we call ourselves an inventor, there's usually two states of consciousness that comes forth when you bring something and you manifest it into the 3D. You look at something on this level, and you can either respond from the ego, and you can go, oh, my gosh, I will make millions selling this to the world. Or you will look at it from a higher consciousness, and you go, oh, my gosh, I could do so much for so many people on this planet. And fortunately, in my decision, I chose the latter of that. And then I had to try to find the balance of bringing it forth and allowing, the monetary energy to come forth, as well as bring it to a global awareness. And so it took about almost 3 years for me to finally be able to come to the understanding of what my mission is. So, and it's really changed because I was doing the hands-on energy work at centers, and I was charging, to do these sessions with people. And, I made it very affordable for everyone, which was great. And we had different levels of the experiences. But when you did the hands-on work with me, you're in a room, and we're doing this energy exchange for about 45 minutes to an hour. And it's very profound. You'd see the tangible results. People that, were diagnosed with, diseases, and what happened is after several experiences, they would have just an immense higher quality of life. And this was the key thing. We had a gentleman that came in, he was literally given 6 months to live. And and he literally had 30 surgeries in his life. He was really, physically a mess, and he literally, he wasn't spiritual in any way, and he just said, I'm just doing this because I have nothing better to lose. I have nothing to lose, and only to gain. So, and then he said, just explain this to me when you can. And but then he started coming 3 times a week, and he literally, was transformed because his own instincts, instead of once a week, he asked, can I do this more? And I said yes, and I got to watch something amazing myself. Is someone who got 6 months to live, he literally lived 3.5 years. And what was important is that he was able to complete everything that he wanted to do in this life before he left. Wow. And he left with the highest of honor, and I was so honored that I got to really watch him, live his life, and then to go against what everyone else was telling him. And his family was so grateful every time they see me, and I see them. We literally well up in tears because we know, he lived here 3 years longer than anyone, and he had a higher quality of life. He was living his life. He wasn't in a wheelchair. He wasn't in a hospital bed. He wasn't in a hospice. He was with his family. And when he crossed, he said to his wife, I love you, and that night he crossed in his sleep. So when you look at the highest honor of transition, that is, I am not to forget, events like that. And this is something that is really important on the higher consciousness, because none of us really know when our day, is when our last day on this planet is. So when we can get to a conscious shift to live life in its fullest, as high as we can in every day. It's hard to live every day like it's your last, because that's a lot of energy. But to be in loving kindness, to be, happy to every level of life that comes your way, and to honor it is a brilliant way of living your life. So this is something that I've watched in others that experience this, that either take it or go to, come and see me, or they go to centers that have the technology, or they make their choice to purchase one and to make it part of their lives. We have about 500 of the different technologies around the world, and it's amazing. We have people that literally, have the small one that literally fits in a carry-on case, and they travel all over the world with it. It's really amazing, the stories that people email me, and I call them Lifestream ambassadors. It's just really amazing because they bring the energy with them. And yes, you can take them on the airplane. They're very easy. That's what's great about them. They're kind of mysterious at first, but you just let them, do their scans. They'll ask you what it is. You just tell them it's a wellness tool. And but it's just amazing. We have 5 different models, from a very small one that fits in a suitcase, to a very large one that's about almost 7 feet tall. That's for 100 people.
How many people is the small one for?
The small one's really good for the individual up to about 8 people, because it puts out actually a fairly large field. It puts out about a 12-foot diameter field. So when I was invited to like a party in Ojai, and I only knew the person that took me, and I said, I'm going to bring a live stream, and she said, that's a great idea. And we were in this beautiful home, and I didn't know anyone there, but the table in the kitchen was empty, and it had 8 chairs around it, and it was in a circle. And I literally just took the live stream out and put it in the center of the table, and I sat in one of the chairs, and I turned it on. And within like 5 minutes, people were coming over, and they go, what's going on over here? And they would just start sitting down. They go, wow, it feels really good over here. And next thing we know, we had about 14, 15 people, just encompassing the table, and we're having these amazing conversations, and everyone was just smiling and very present. My friend was just watching in awe, because she said, oh my God, now you know all these people, and all you did was you sat there with a smile on your face and turned on this live stream, and it just attracts people. I said, yeah, the people on the higher consciousness can see it. It's a very large beacon, and it is something that we seek. When many are looking for this understanding, of what we're seeking in our lives, but we're always looking for that higher vibration, or that level of beautification, where we can walk in the fields and all of a sudden what worry and anxieties or levels of stress is now eliminated from your immediate field, and you become homeostasis, in balance within your thoughts. And this is what's really fun is like when I have gatherings here, what the first time people come in, I just put them in the energy, and they just have the most unique looks on their face. I go, and then I ask them after about 5 minutes later, I say, can you do me a favor? And they go, yeah. I said, can you think of a negative thought? And they just start laughing. And I go, what's wrong? They says, I can't think of anything. I'm just right here. I go, did you hear what you just said? And they're like, yeah, I'm just right here. I can't think of anything else besides being here right now. I go, exactly. And I said, and that's where the magic happens. So this is really, it's wonderful when you get to see this happen with, like a dozen people to hundreds of people. And it just makes my life, just so worthwhile because you see, how this is going to shift people. And a lot of people have, conscious awakenings. It all depends on what level that they're tethered to or what step they are. And then when you get to another level of conscious clarity, then all of a sudden it's amazing. You literally, you pierce those veils, or those veils thin before you, and you start seeing, on a much higher level of awareness. And this is really interesting. Sometimes the dialogues can be, very amazing, to have with people. Sometimes people, it's uncomfortable because they start seeing beyond what they, because a lot of people, it's hard for them to realize, but we walk around with these energetic blinders, just like on a horse. When you want a horse to just walk straight, you put those cups around the eyes so it can't see its peripheral. It can't see what's coming off to the side, so it's not distracted. But so many people walk that way in life. And so when you remove those blinders, all of a sudden they're seeing what they haven't seen in a long time again. And then we have to integrate that again. And then now we have a much greater sensitivity. So instead of, driving your car with blinders on and all of a sudden you get sideswiped, when you remove the blinders, you can see that something's coming, and now you can sense, I should wait another second, and then all of a sudden that vehicle flies by you, and you go, wow, that would have been really bad if I would have, drove forward. So this is the conscious shift that we start to realize.
Wow. It's so fascinating to hear about all this. And, of course, I told you I've been watching videos and everything like that. I am, you and I spoke before the broadcast, I am so excited to come there sometime in the next week to have this experience. And, of course, today while I was watching some of the videos, I was like, oh, wow, why didn't I make my way down to Los Angeles or Santa Monica to have the experience before the show? But regardless of that, this is all just really fascinating. Now, you are also, well, we'll see how you respond to this. In my eyes, I'd say you're a bit of an expert on solar flares.
Well,
now, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I would actually honestly say I'm far from an expert. I have no degrees, in any level of science in that aspect. But what I do like to call, and a lot of people are really understanding the terminology is we call it solar consciousness, and we understand our greater connection to the sun. And this is something that I am consciously guided to stream, when I get the call to do so, and to be aware and also realize my sensitivity to the solar activity, instantaneously when I can feel the shifts in my own energetic field. And before the monitors, on the satellites even report it, all of a sudden, I know that there's an event. So I would get up and I'd write it down, and then I'd wait 3 or 4 hours. Then the sensors are now sending that information back to us on Earth. And so I realized, wait a minute, there's something greater happening here.
It's funny. I was sitting with, do you know Peter Sterling, the harpist?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Peter and I were sitting in a restaurant in Ojai a couple of nights ago, and his iPhone went off, and he said, oh, it's another solar flare. So there's actually an app that's then sending him, pushing him the information when it's happening. But, John, tell me, I've had an incredibly difficult, since Friday. Is it the solar flares, or am I just an emotional basket case?
Well, Dr. Dream, I would have to say it's probably a combination of both.
No truer words have been spoken tonight.
Yeah, well, I could call myself a basket case in many ways. You know, what the aspects is like when we don't have the obvious, when all of a sudden when we just feel completely out of sorts with our own physical selves, with our own consciousness, you know, we don't have, if it's not in front of us, you know, then, you know, we have to look outside. And it's really great, like when I do my posts on Facebook and explain, you know, what some of the feelings might be. It's amazing how many people respond back and they go, oh, thank you so much, because I could not figure out what was going on, you know, with me. This makes so much sense now. And, you know, so this is very interesting is when you start to realize this. And, you know, and then I'm just guided to post these videos and talk about the events, you know, that are happening, and then try to put it in, you know, in terms of where people can associate what a CME or what a coronal mass ejection is, you know, and you know, how does that affect us on the planet? Well, a lot of the ancient civilizations understood the connection to the sun in such a great way. And when we talk about solar consciousness, we have to look at the sun much, much more than a hydrogen ball that's generating heat on this planet. It is so much more. And this is what we're realizing. So there's no nothing that we can predict directly of what the sun is. If any scientist is going to tell you, you know, supposedly we're supposed to be in a solar minimum. But now you know, just this week alone, we had some of the most intense solar activity ever recorded. And this is something that if you've been feeling it, then you're right on track, because this literally threw so many people out of sorts this week. And it was because we had a coronal mass ejection that happened a few days ago that was Earth facing, and this is one of the most important ones that affect us the most. But what was different about this is that it was a long duration ejection, and we've never seen anything like that. I think the event literally lasted for like 3 hours. Instead of it just emitting a burst, you know, of an M-class flare, it literally sustained this burst, and it just sent this huge wave to the planet. But while this burst was going off, so many of us were just sitting there just like completely left, you know, and, you know, our equilibriums are off. We were in this time shift, you know, and so now, you know, it's very easy to say, well, how can we associate that? Well, we have sensors in space now. We have several different satellites that are constantly monitoring the sun from so many different angles. And one of the things that, if you go to one of the websites that I constantly monitor, and that's solarimg.org, and they have what's called ARTIS, ARTIS, which is almost real-time instrument viewing. And you can see all the different sensors around the world. Now, what has happened this week is that if we just look at the electron flux took such a massive shift where it was normally, you know, at one level, it literally almost doubled in the amount of particles, you know, that are bombarded that hit the planet. So that immediately shifts, you know, the magnosphere, you know, but the electrons are constantly free flowing. But then what happens is that we are in the last couple of years, we have seen what is supposedly be in physics impossible, and that is proton shifts. You know, so, you know, we're seeing the shifts in protons drastically going askew. And science to this day, and this is the reason why they don't report this in the mainstream media, is because they can't grasp what is truly happening. They say, well, this isn't supposed to happen. You know, so also we see protons and electrons and then gamma rays, you know, completely doing, you know, abnormal behaviors. Everyone has to take a step back and look at it, because what it starts to do is it starts to affect the perception of time as we know it. You know, and, you know, what we understand that how we perceive time, and then how the planet is affected by what we call time. You know, and this starts to shift when electrons and protons start to shift drastically. Everything that we know kind of takes a different perspective, and especially in our physical selves. You know, literally our bodies are oscillating in these frequency fields. Most people don't realize that we're being bombarded with thousands of frequencies, you know, every second. Just because we can't see it with our eyes doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But right now, everyone's getting hit with AM, FM, cellular, cell towers, XM radio constantly. These are things that man has increased in the natural, realm of the planet. And our bodies are really good at protecting ourselves until the system becomes weak. And then what happens is the effect is called cellular permeation, is where these energies start to go, instead of just bouncing off of us, they start to go absorb into the cell structure. That's where we start to see great imbalances. So these energies that come from the sun, sometimes without us realizing it, can recharge us. But they can also cause us to go askew if we're not really aware of what's going on. Because if someone's not in touch with their physical self, all of a sudden, if they're feeling anxiety, if they feed that anxiety, they'll end up in the emergency room. And then they're wanting someone else to tell them what's wrong with them. So this is something we have to be really aware of. And I had literally a dozen people this week, contact me, wanting to go to the hospital, wanting, they said something's wrong with me. And I go, well, you're contacting me right in the middle of a massive solar event, and this is happening. You're not the only one that is called. And once we started talking, they felt much better. And I just said, well, if you got nothing to do, just rest and hydrate yourself, and rest as much as possible. And then hours later, they were through it, and they were back to their normal selves again. So this is something very interesting. But anyone who said they were on their way to the hospital, I said, I would not tell them to turn around in any way, shape, or form. I would say, okay, they might have a hard time associating what's going on unless you have a real ailment. But just be aware they might be scratching their heads. But they a lot of them do know now that that the human systems are affected by solar activity, and this is one of the most important dots that it's time for us to connect. Actually, Fox and MSNBC actually reported because of the intense solar storm, they had to avert planes from flying over the poles this week.
Wow!
And so that made it in the news. So now they're admitting to it in an amazing way. And if you look at some of the posts on my Facebook, you can see I was constantly trying to keep people updated with what was happening on all aspects. From the solar watchers, to the regular media and what spin they're putting on it. But literally, when a plane averts the poles, why are they doing that? And that's what we have to understand, is because these energies are hitting the planet. The auroras are this week are probably going to be in records. That they're going to be the most intense that they've ever been seen, and the furthest that they've ever been seen because of the storm that we're in right now. So I've been posting some amazing cams, from different places, that people can see real-time auroras, which is amazing, from different parts of the world. And the intensity, is just incredible. They're just every day they're just coming in just more and more spectacular than the day before. So we're seeing it with our eyes as well as we're feeling it within our bodies, that we are in this great shift that's happening on the planet.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Now,
yeah,
John,
it's exciting.
I've been listening and really enjoying what you've been talking about. Now, I'm sure many people are wondering, as am I, are these solar flares going to affect our radios? Are they going to be able to knock anything down? Is there anything potentially dangerous because of these solar activities?
Well, the dangers that we talk about, a lot of people talk about that great solar storm that fried telegraph cables, like over, 80 years ago or something like that, and or 120 years ago. Back in the 1880s, if I recall, they said we had such a severe solar storm and literally fried telegraph cables. Well, there's a reason for that too, but and it is also the materials that telegraph cables were made from, and the levels of energy that was transmitted over them. Now, the effect, does it affect our technology? It's constantly, every day. If you're noticing internet lag, most people just say, oh, my modem's acting up. But no, it's like it's the neural net of the internet itself is drastically affected by this. I mean, not too many people notice a 200 millisecond slowdown in data, but that's drastic if it was 30 milliseconds. So we're talking, like a drastic lag, that most people consciously wouldn't see, but it is affecting. Now, our cell phones are affecting the same way. It takes longer to connect some of the cell sites, but a lot of the companies are not reporting because of solar activity. They're completely avoiding it, but you can see it happening. And now the dangers itself is, they look, one of the things, unless you're very consciously attuned, and if there's a drastic solar storm that is happening, I usually, would, tell people if you're planning international flights, you might want to reschedule, because the longer you're up in the higher atmosphere, the more you're exposed, to those fields. So, you put yourself 30,000 feet higher than anyone else. So we have to understand the aircrafts that are made now are insulated to avoid the normal amount of, like any levels of radioactivity to ultraviolet, to the gamma, to X-rays, that when they were built, to the standards. But now everything's increasing exponentially. So this is something that we just have to be more cautious about. Now, not to avoid. Now, it has nothing, that we should fear. We should just be more cautious and we check in with self. It's like tomorrow a good day to fly. And then if it doesn't feel right, then reschedule your flight. Always trust your guidance. And this is something that if you ask yourself, you'll usually get a pretty clear answer. If you say, well, I'm going to book my tickets tomorrow, but we feel anxious about it, then keep putting it out there until you don't feel anxious about it. These are simple methods that we can, connect with ourselves instead of getting advice from someone else. Because what happens when we ask somebody else? We're getting their opinion. And if we say, okay, I listened to you, but now I feel terrible because you told me it's okay, then that's another thing. These are type of the energies between others that we want to avoid. So it's very important that we understand the connection with self these days more than ever. This is 2012, everyone. It's a significant year. Everybody wanted to know what's happening, in this year, and it's all accelerating. I mean, the first day, the year of the dragon, with the solar activity, it's pretty significant with the new moon, everything in alignment, and so we're going through a huge shift, and this is going to really alert us in our physical selves. A lot of people are going to get a wake-up call. A lot of the people that are still in the densities of the fast food world, of the illusions, and just living, to try to, to make money, and to acquire the materialistic. These are things that are going to they're going to become very unpleasant in the near future, if not already. And they're not going to appease, them anymore. They're not going to get any level of gratification or satisfaction. And they're going to be looking outside. It's like, well, how come I don't find peace in this anymore? This used to give me peace for many years. Now it doesn't. And so this is a great shift in itself. But it's going to happen on so many different levels. So one of the good things about it is that the satellites, almost 80% of the satellites that are up there now that are monitoring, have safety devices. They have warning devices. The satellites have the ability to go into safety modes. When these solar storms or these particles, actually come from the sun. There is so we understand. So they've already put those precautions in the satellites, as well as the sensor equipment. So we need to do the same thing. We have to understand, how to respond, to solar storms. Some people can easily be outside, where others it's best to stay indoors during them. It all depends on your sensitivity.
Right.
Absolutely. And I actually wanted to transition into 2012 because a lot of people are experiencing this shift in consciousness. And I'd like to just to talk a little bit more about how these solar flares and solar activity relate to people's shift in consciousness, and if there are any energies coming from the sun that are changing us on any levels.
Oh, absolutely. If you really want to go there, I'll go there with you. You guys really want to go there on this show? Okay.
Well, Bree, let's. I don't have a rope connected to me, and I'm feeling like we're jumping down the rabbit hole here. But within our time constraints, we got about 10 or 12 minutes left. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Well, the good news is about it is that there's no conspiracies from the sun. When we understand what has been known, for thousands of years on this planet, and the aspects of our level of consciousness, our level of connections, our level of creation. When there are people that have this knowledge that have chosen to keep it a secret because they're still trapped in between the dualities. So when we understand this, what I call solar consciousness, these are the same things. These are precursors as what we were able to do with technologies, that is a part of the Lifestream. Now, why does the Lifestream why does it do what it does is very simple. For one thing, I don't use current implemented technology on this planet, and it does what is deemed impossible. Now, why is that? Because if I draw it out and I show it to an engineer, they said, that's not going to work. That's going to destroy itself. I go, based on your educational understanding, you are correct. But it doesn't. And why does it not destroy itself? Why does it not burn itself up? And they go, well, I can't explain that, but what you drew is not what you have in there. I go, yeah, it's exactly what I have in there. And so this is now why does it do what it does is because it has a component that was originally designed back in 1883 in it. And the last time it was ever made on the planet was in 1944. So we're talking about an electromotive device, like a rotary transformer that was made for, military applications. And, it was actually adapted for military applications. But then in my research, I started looking at this thing and understanding that it is doing so much more, than what it was built for. And actually, its true essence or its effect is being suppressed. And so when I acquire these devices, where I search the world trying to find these devices, to put in each individual life stream, I have to modify every single one of them to create this phenomenon. And that phenomenon is literally a higher source of energy accumulation beyond what we use today. And that's the reason why when we bring this energy field forth, all of a sudden people go into homeostasis. They go into the present moment. Now, why is that? Because I can create a generator that will bring forth a unified field. I'm not dialing in any particular frequency like I've been educated to do. And I literally went back over 100 years to Nikola Tesla's work with his radiant energy principles. He was the first one to truly understand this. You can literally go to websites on the internet and see that he was creating in Colorado Springs radiant energy transmitters that literally he could take light bulbs and place them to the earth and they would just light up with no cords, no nothing. And I was just doing that yesterday, and just showing, that this can also do this as well. He understood this, but it was way too far ahead of our conscious time. This is a lot of people would like to see the conspiracy aspect of it, but there was so much more to it. So this is the understanding, is when we understand that these fields, what is the Lifestream doing? It's only amplifying what already exists everywhere on this planet. It doesn't matter where you bring the Lifestream, it'll bring forth this energy. You can run it on a battery, you can plug it into the wall, you can run a hand crank generator and generate these energy fields. It does not matter. So this is something that we have to understand. Now, why is that? Because when we understand that the planet is constantly in movement, when you do research with Nassim Haramein, and what we've been shown is how our planets in our solar system go around the sun. And when we talk about one solar year, But then what we don't see is we don't see that our entire solar system that's constantly moving through the universe. No one shows us that. So the theme actually shows us that with some beautiful animations, showing that like a year ago, we're actually 1 million miles in space further than we were last year. So everything's in constant motion and expansion. So now we can also use that math and realize that we're venturing around. Even the Mayans knew this, that we're venturing around and we're ending up at this point in space that the Earth hasn't been around in 26,000 years, 24 to 26,000 years. Now, when we understand that, the world was an incredibly different place back then. The energy on this planet was incredibly different. This is the hardest thing for us to grasp, because our current history only goes back a couple thousand years, in regards to what is considered tangible, what has been kept on record. And we can see something great happened on this planet, and then it was gone, and now something great is happening again. So there are two different levels of comprehension. What happened back then, and when we look at the pyramids, I don't care who it is, you are in awe when you go there. When you go to Egypt, or you go to the Mayan pyramids, and you stand there, you are in awe. It doesn't matter who you are, and you're constantly looking up. And this is something that is really amazing, is that to this day, it's beyond our comprehension on how it was done. Yes, the Torah, the Egyptologists will tell you something to give you an answer. But 9 out of 10 times it doesn't resonate with anybody who's consciously aware. They say, how could that be? And then they'll try to avoid answering any more questions. And we have, wonderful people like Stephen Mailer and John Anthony West, and a lot of other people like that, William Henry, that take people out to Egypt and say, look deeper, let's look further, let's get our eyes, off the obvious or the tourist aspect and look deeper. So this is something that we're able to see that is coming on the planet. Now, how does that connect with the sun? It's very simple. We are going to go through this transitional time in 2012 where these energy fields that have been missing for thousands of years are now going to be amplified and literally be returning to the planet. So what's going to happen is that now it's the same thing, is that when all of a sudden we take a shift in consciousness, just like I did, and I combined something that was used to devastate people, in war. It was designed for a military purpose, on bombers, back in World War II. Now, my consciousness saw beyond that and said, I can use this for a positive effect. And so I went deeper into the understanding, and I brought it forth at a higher level of consciousness. This is the drastic shift that's going to happen, because we are going to be introduced, we're going to be bombarded with these unified streams. And what it's going to do is going to shift our consciousness in such a great state on this planet. And this is the reason why it is like literally, that's the reason why we don't have a current prophet. That's the reason why there is no one that is like out there like a Jesus Christ or a Krishna or a Buddha that is literally taking the role that is in the highest that is in the highest of states, that is walking on this planet at this point in time. This is something that is it's very difficult to explain, but then when we understand that we've been playing out certain scenarios for just a handful of thousands of years on this planet, but now something greater is going to happen, and it's going to happen within the mass consciousness on the planet. When we look at we're teetering on 7 trillion people on this planet. Am I correct with that figure? It's billions of people. When we understand the mass consciousness that's on this planet right now, and the awakening that's going to happen in that level, and is it going to happen within myself as someone that's going to step to the forefront? It doesn't have to. This is happening in such a conscious collective. And the further we go, the greater the shift happens. And so if we are surrendering to it, this is where we are going to take these incredible accelerations. If we resist, it's going to be very unpleasant. So this is something we can obviously watch, and we have to make the choice. But we have to know what our choices are at the same time. So that's the reason why we can easily use, the matrix as a great reference. Is that, do we really want to know how deep the rabbit hole really goes? Are we ready for that? Who is really ready? And this is the reason why we can see when they talk to futurists or people that have these abilities, there's this great block, that what happens outside 2012. And they can't foresee that. Well, there's a good reason for that, is because time as we know it is going to drastically shift. Now this is the hard thing for people to understand unless you have a really good way of perceiving time and understand how we perceive it. So this is where it gets very interesting. So the solar consciousness is one of the keys. When we get bombarded with protons, when we get bombarded with gammas, of course it's going to shift us. It's going to shift us physically. It's going to shift us mentally. It's going to shift us spiritually. And sometimes the veil's thin and the illusion is revealed for a microsecond. It doesn't take much, and that's all we need sometimes to hold on. Then to take that one step forward, or the 2 steps forward. And usually in our lives, as we progress, we'll take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, because we have to absorb it. We have to integrate. We have to allow it, to become part of us. Because sometimes if we walk too brightly into the light, it will overwhelm us. It will literally burn us. And this is something that I personally experienced this year, because literally, like on my 50th birthday, I was called to go to India, and I stood on the day of my birth. I went, and I was standing on top of the mountain of Mahadevamalai, and I was standing before the 19th Siddha, and his name is Mahanananda Siddha, and he has literally been proclaimed as the 19th Siddha. He hasn't eaten food or drank water for nearly 9 years, and he had such a profound. He went through a transmutation when Shiva came before him. And embodied in the physical, and literally gave him this great boon to live 500 years and to change his complete life. And now Siddha is omniscience because of this experience, because an ascended master decided to take physical form and to project himself before someone that was just like you and I. So when we understand what, on a scientific standpoint, or just from an energetic standpoint, if an ascended being all of a sudden came and became in physical form before you, that would be equivalent to the strength of my highest live stream times 1,000. You would be in that presence of an energy field. So naturally, it is going to change you. So the ascended masters know that if a person is not ready for it, and they present themselves before them, they could destroy a person. So this is something that we have to understand. We have to do the due diligence to be able to absorb these energy fields. If we resist, and we stay in the illusion that it's going to be very unpleasant for the masses on this planet. But if we realize that something higher than us is happening, and it is, it's happening off this planet, and that's what's happening with the sun. The sun is literally waking us up. And when we look up in the sky and we see these auroras, and within possibly by the end of this year, we might even see the aurora borealis here in California. That is going to show that will without a doubt show that the world is changing as we know it. And so to be in Egypt on 12/21 with the planetary alignments and all this, I can't wait.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable experience you're setting up for yourself and others. John, I want to thank you for being our guest tonight on Dream Reality New Earth Radio. You're absolutely fascinating. I just want to say, I knew you would be fascinating. I didn't even know you'd be this fascinating. And an hour and a half was not enough time. We'd love to have you back. Your wealth of knowledge, and you will see me in the next week for my Lifestream experience. But thank you so much, and thank you for what you're doing and the balance that you found in it. And so on behalf of the entire collective, I'm going to thank you. Thank you.
I thank you, Dr. Dream, and Ilya. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. It was a pleasure having you on.